Welcome back to Cine Bite, where we don't just watch movies, we dive into their darkest corners. Today's recap takes you deep into a chilling legend, one that starts with a whisper, grows with fear, and ends in madness. Say his name, and the empty man comes. This isn't just a horror story, it's a descent into the unknown. Let's unravel the terrifying truth behind the empty man. The movie begins in the remote and mist-shrouded Ura Valley of Bhutan in the year 1995. Four close friends, Greg, Paul, Fiona, and Ruthie, embark on a high-altitude trek deep into the mountains. They are searching for a mysterious location, something they have only heard whispers about, driven by both curiosity and a desire for discovery. The film opens with an eerie caption, Day 1. As they ascend through the chilling wilderness, Paul stumbles upon what appears to be a strange, ancient object, an eerie flute-like instrument. On impulse, he blows into it. Almost immediately, he hears a haunting and unnatural sound echoing through the valley, a sound that seems to call out directly to him. Compelled by an unseen force, Paul follows the sound, wandering away from the group. He accidentally slips and falls into a narrow, deep crevice in the earth. Greg, alarmed, rushes to find him and discovers Paul sitting at the bottom of the chasm beside a grotesque and impossibly large skeleton, twisted and humanoid in form. Paul is motionless, gazing blankly into space, murmuring to himself as if in a trance. Even more unnerving, the skeleton next to him seems to move ever so slightly, sending a jolt of fear through Greg. Managing to keep calm, Greg pulls Paul out of the fissure just in time. As snow begins to fall and darkness sets in, the group's unease grows. They find an abandoned house nearby and decide to shelter there, hoping to recover from the shock and get Paul some rest. By day 2, Paul's condition has not improved. He lies silently on a mattress, unmoving and unresponsive, as if trapped in some unseen mental dimension. Outside the house, the wind howls and snow swirls. Ruthie peers out into the white blur and suddenly notices a shadowy figure standing eerily still in the distance. Alarmed, she steps backward, but the figure imitates her movements perfectly. Then, without warning, it charges toward her. Terrified, Ruthie runs back inside, slams the door shut, and locks it. She hears heavy pounding on the door, but refuses to open it until Greg and Fiona return and confirm it was them outside. Shaken, Ruthie asks if they saw anyone. They exchange puzzled looks. They saw no one. That night, as Ruthie attempts to sleep, the atmosphere grows heavier. Suddenly, she hears a low whisper near her ear. It's Paul, speaking in a barely audible tone, uttering words she cannot understand. This sends chills down her spine. On day 3, the group decides to continue their journey through the harsh terrain. Paul, still in a strange state, walks silently with the others. Ruthie appears mentally distant, lost in thought and acting strangely detached. Without warning, she pulls a knife from her coat and attacks Greg and Fiona, stabbing them violently in a frenzy. Their screams echo into the mountains as Ruthie coldly throws their bodies off the cliff's edge. Then, without hesitation, she leaps after them. Only Paul remains. Standing still, he raises the flute-like instrument to his lips once more and begins to play, as if unaware or unaffected by the bloody events that just unfolded. The narrative then shifts dramatically to Missouri in 2018. James Lasombra, a former detective now working at a quiet security hardware store, is haunted by his past. Ever since his wife Allison and their son Henry died in a tragic car accident a year earlier, he's been plagued by a mysterious voice in his head constantly whispering, "Where were you?" The guilt weighs heavily on him. James maintains a protective eye over Amanda Quayle, a troubled teenager whose mother, Nora, is his longtime friend. Amanda, still reeling from her own father's death, has grown distant from her mother and looks up to James as a father figure. One day, Amanda vanishes without a trace. A distraught Nora turns to James for help. Together, they search Amanda's room and discover a cryptic message scrawled on her bathroom mirror in what appears to be blood. "The empty man made me do it." The police take over the case, but James cannot shake his instincts. Something is deeply wrong. Determined, he launches his own investigation into Amanda's disappearance and the meaning behind the ominous message. His search leads him to Amanda's high school, where he tracks down her friend, Devora Walsh. She agrees to speak with him privately in his car. Devora recounts a chilling story about Amanda and 4 other teens, Brandon, Julian, Lisa, and Duncan, who recently performed a ritual at a bridge outside town. They were attempting to summon the empty man, a local urban legend said to appear 3 days after being called. As part of the ritual, they blew into a bottle to signal his arrival. According to Devora, on the first day they heard strange whispers. On the second, they felt a sinister presence watching them. And on the third, the empty man was supposed to come for them. Devora adds a disturbing detail. She saw Amanda lean in and whisper something into Brandon's ear that night, eerily similar to what Paul did to Ruthie decades ago in Bhutan. As Devora exits the car, she pauses, staring into the dark tree line. Her voice trembles. She thinks she just saw the empty man, watching them from the woods. Later that night, driven by instinct and a growing sense of dread, James returns to the same bridge where Amanda and her friends performed the eerie summoning ritual. His goal is to investigate further into Amanda's disappearance, hoping to uncover clues that the authorities might have missed or ignored. Under the weight of silence and fog, James walks slowly across the bridge, scanning the area. He spots the very bottle Amanda and her friends had used during the ritual. Curiosity, and perhaps something deeper pulling at him, compels James to lift the bottle to his lips and blow into it, unknowingly repeating the summoning act. After a moment of silence, he notices a ladder leading beneath the structure. He cautiously climbs down into the cold shadows below the bridge and makes a horrifying discovery. The bodies of Brandon, Julian Meyer, Lisa, and Duncan, Amanda's friends, are hanging lifelessly in a row, suspended like offerings in some grisly ritual. The chilling phrase scrawled on Amanda's mirror, "The empty man made me do it," is eerily repeated nearby, smeared in what looks like blood. The brutality and ritualistic arrangement of the scene leave James shaken, but determined to press on. Meanwhile, elsewhere in town, Devora, Amanda's friend who had recounted the story to James earlier, visits a spa. A thick fog engulfs the area, creating an eerie, dreamlike atmosphere. Suddenly, she is attacked in the mist by a shadowy, indistinct figure believed to be the empty man himself. The assault is brutal and swift, and she is stabbed to death with a pair of scissors. Strangely, the scene is arranged to appear as if she took her own life, leading the authorities to declare it a suicide. But James, now growing more convinced that a supernatural force is at play, doesn't believe the official ruling. The circumstances are far too strange, far too deliberate. He senses a pattern of manipulation, deception, and something much darker unfolding. Now on day one of his personal investigation, James delves deeper into the origins of the empty man legend. His research leads him to a mysterious cult known as the Pontifex Institute, an organization whose beliefs and rituals appear to be rooted in the same mythos as the events in Bhutan. The deeper he digs, the more disturbing the connections become. He realizes the terrifying link between what happened to Paul and his friends decades ago in Bhutan and what is happening now in Missouri. James decides to visit the headquarters of the Pontifex Institute. There, he attends a gathering where the cult's enigmatic leader, Arthur Parsons, gives a sermon-like address to a room full of followers. Parsons speaks with charisma and conviction, describing the empty man as an all-powerful entity that grants its followers their deepest desires, but only if they submit to its will and obey its mysterious commands. After the speech, James confronts Parsons in private. Their conversation is cryptic but revealing. Parsons confirms that the cult views the empty man not as a myth, but as a real metaphysical force capable of influencing reality through belief and submission. On day two, James begins shadowing individuals associated with the Institute. His pursuit eventually leads him to a nearby hospital. There, he makes a startling discovery. Paul, the same man who encountered the empty man in Bhutan in 1995, is alive but in a completely vegetative state, sustained only by machines. Even more disturbingly, people enter Paul's room regularly, bowing in reverence and chanting softly, as if worshipping him like a vessel of divine presence. James is unsettled. The devotion these people show suggests that Paul is no longer just a victim. He has become a conduit for the entity they revere. Back at the police precinct, James's independent actions begin to draw attention. Other detectives scold him for interfering in an active investigation, reminding him firmly that he's retired and should not be meddling. But James, convinced that he's uncovering a dangerous truth others are too blind or too afraid to see, refuses to back down. His obsession with the case deepens. Later, James visits Nora again. She is consumed with worry over Amanda's disappearance and emotional distance. During their conversation, James subtly brings up their past, asking whether Amanda ever found out about the affair they once had. Nora is adamant. Amanda never knew. But this exchange reveals more about James than Nora. The guilt from his past is catching up to him, infecting his mind like the presence of the empty man. Following a hunch, James ventures into the dense woods outside town. There, in a clearing shrouded by mist and moonlight, he witnesses a terrifying spectacle. Members of the Pontifex cult dressed in ceremonial hooded robes that resemble the empty man. They begin slowly advancing toward him in silence, their synchronized steps eerily mechanical. James's pulse quickens as their pace grows faster and more aggressive. Realizing the danger, he turns and flees toward his car. A frantic chase ensues. The cult members pursue him with relentless determination. James narrowly escapes, slamming the car door and speeding away, his mind reeling from what he just witnessed. On day 3, James finally finds Amanda, but the girl he knew is gone. She is eerily calm, her eyes hollow, her voice detached. Amanda tells him that the empty man seeks out people who are already empty inside, emotionally, spiritually, and uses them as vessels to carry out his will. She then begins to echo the same haunting phrase James has heard in his head since the death of his family. "Where were you?" The words cut through him like a blade, dragging him back to the darkest night of his life. Amanda's voice becomes an echo chamber of his guilt, forcing him to confront the tragic truth. The night Allison and Henry died in a car crash, James wasn't home. He was with Nora. James finally confesses the affair and admits that he blames himself for his family's death. This revelation weighs heavily on him, cracking whatever emotional walls he had left. Amanda's chilling serenity only deepens his despair. Emotionally broken and spiritually vulnerable, James stumbles back to the hospital, where Paul still lies unresponsive. In a moment of madness, or possibly surrender, James pulls out his gun and empties the entire clip into Paul's skull. Strangely, the doctors and nurses in the room, silent observers who are also members of the cult, do not panic. Instead, they turn toward James with reverence. In their eyes, he has fulfilled the prophecy. He is now their new vessel, the new empty man. In this disturbing climax, James loses all grip on his former self. The man who once sought truth and justice has been hollowed out, consumed by the very darkness he was trying to fight. Now a shell, a tool for something much more sinister, James becomes the embodiment of the entity he feared most. The transformation is complete. So, what really happened at the end of The Empty Man? After 3 days of disturbing visions, cult chases, and mind-bending discoveries, James Lasombra finally comes face to face with the truth, and it's far more terrifying than any urban legend. Amanda, no longer the scared teen we met at the beginning, reveals that James was never just investigating the empty man. He was being prepared to become him. The Pontifex Institute didn't just want a follower. They were shaping a vessel, a shell empty enough to carry something ancient, cosmic, and horrifying. Paul, the man found decades ago in Bhutan, was the original host. But after years in a vegetative state, he could no longer hold the entity. And so the cult chose James, someone broken by grief, guilt, and trauma, someone already empty inside. In the film's final act, James shoots Paul in the hospital, but instead of facing arrest, the cult members around him bow. To them, this isn't a murder, it's a rebirth. Paul's time is over. James is now the new empty man. His identity dissolves, his consciousness fades. What remains is a vessel, manipulated, consumed, and completely overtaken by a force beyond comprehension. So what does it all mean? The Empty Man isn't just a horror story about a spooky legend. It's a slow descent into existential terror, a look at how belief, trauma, and cult manipulation can erode a person's sense of self. It's not about being haunted, it's about being hollowed out. By the end, James isn't the hero. He's the final victim. The Empty Man made me do it. Wasn't a warning, it was a prophecy. If you find this video interesting, please give it a like, click on a subscribe button in order not to miss the incoming videos. Goodbye, and see you then.